This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today finds John, Arja, and Matt rejoining me, and I've decided to play the Duke of Dumpsters with Daretti. I keep Mountain, Fabled Passage, Grindstone, Walking Ballista, Command Beacon, and Crucible of Worlds. Arja is playing his Ashnod deck, keeping 2 Swamps, Graz the Unstoppable Juggernaut, Razorlash Transmogrant, Possessed Portal, Herald of Anguish, and Inspiring Statuary. John is rocking Kykar, keeping Rogrin Triome, Needleverge Pathway, Stormkiln Artist, Archmage Emeritus, Baral Chief of Compliance, Dockside Extortionist, and a Seething Anger. Matt just wants to share his love of rats with his Ashcoat deck, keeping 2 Swamps, Rat Colony, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, Ogre Slumlord, and Intimidation. I win the die roll and start us off. I draw and play a Fabled Passage, sacrificing it for a mountain. Arja plays a Swamp and casts Ashnod before passing to John. John just plays a tapped Rogrin Triome. Matt plays a Swamp and passes to me. I draw and play a Command Beacon, and then tap it for a Mana Vault. I then tap that for a Crucible of Worlds, and pass. Arja's got a Swamp for turn, and then casts a Razorlash Transmogrant. Moving to combat, he pokes me for 1 with Ashnod, and sacrifices the Razorlash to make a Power Stone. He passes after that. John plays his Needleverge Pathway, and then casts Talisman of Conviction. Matt places Nykthos for his land drop, and taps 2 for a Rat Colony. I draw for turn, and then replay and sacrifice my Fabled Passage from my graveyard, going to find a mountain. I then cast Faithless Looting, drawing 2 and discarding 2. Arja plays a Swamp for turn, and taps 3 for Inspiring Statuary. He moves to combat and once more swings Ashnod at me. This time around he doesn't sacrifice anything though, and passes to John. John plays a Terramorphic Expanse, and then plays a blue and a colorless for Baral. He then cracks the Expanse to go and find a basic, and passes to Matt while searching. Matt draws and plays a Swamp. He then plays a second Rat Colony, and moves to combat. He swings the first Rat Colony at me, dealing 3, and passing. I draw and play and crack the Fabled Passage again from my graveyard. I then play an Imperial Recruiter, and I go into my library to find Dockside Extortionist, putting it to hand and passing. Arja plays a Swamp, and then casts Plaguecrafter, and everyone sacrifices a creature. He follows up with a Transmogrant's Crown, and equips it onto Ashnod, and then goes to combat. He continues swinging her at me, and I take 3 this time around, and he then passes to John. John draws and plays his Dockside Extortionist, getting 5 treasure tokens. He then plays a Port Town, which comes in tapped, and he casts Kykar, using some of his treasures. He passes after that. Matt draws and plays a Swamp. He casts Ashcoat and moves to combat. He swings the Rat Colony at Arja for 3, who takes the hit, and Matt then passes through his phases to his end step. He gets an Ashcoat trigger, milling 4, and returning 2 Rat Colonies back to his hand. I pay to untap my Mana Vault on my upkeep, and then draw for turn. I then play and crack the Fabled Passage again, and pass after that. Arja draws and goes to combat. Once more, Ashnod goes at me, dealing 3, and in his second main phase, he then casts Herald of Anguish. Moving to his end step, we each discard a card, and Arja passes. John draws and plays Smothering Tithe, making a Spirit token from Kykar's trigger. He then sacrifices his remaining treasure and a Spirit token to cast a Stormkiln Artist. He passes to Matt after that. Matt draws and plays Shizo Death Storehouse. He follows it up with a Rat Colony and moves to combat. He swings Ashcoat at me and 2 Rat Colonies at John. The colonies get an additional +3/+3 from Ashcoat, becoming 7 4s, and John chumps 1 of them with his Dockside. John and I then take our hits, and in his post-combat main phase, Matt sacrifices a Rat Colony to cast Diabolic Intent. After he's done tutoring, he moves to his end step, and Ashcoat triggers, milling him 4, and once more, Matt returns 2 rat colonies to his hand. I draw and play a Mycosynth Lattice in my main phase, and then follow it up with a Dockside Extortionist. Since everything is now an artifact, I get 26 treasures. I then cast a Decaying Time Loop to discard my hand and draw a new one. And then play Wheel of Fortune to do it again. John makes a ton of treasures off those wheels though. And once he's done that, I play out Daretti. I follow up my commander by casting Jeska's Will to get 7 red mana and exile my top 3. This gets me a Thrill of Possibilities, which I cast after discarding a card, and I draw 2 more. I then play Brass's Tunnel Grinder, discarding my hand to keep digging. I can't find anything though, so I uptick Daretti, discarding 2 lands to draw 2 more. I then retrace Decaying Time Loop. This hand has a bit more action, as I cast an Underworld Breach, and then a Kykar Clan Ironworks. John responds to my Underworld Breach by casting Whisperings of the Muse with buyback to draw a card, and then plays it 3 more times. He then casts a Mystical Tutor, which he uses to go and find Shattering Pulse. He then casts the Whispers of the Muse 1 more time, drawing the Shattering Pulse, and then casts Shattering Pulse with buyback on that, and targets the Underworld Breach. He then continues to cast the Pulse, targeting Daretti, Herald of Anguish, Ashcoat, and then finally the Mycosynth Lattice. Once I get priority back, I sacrifice my treasure to Kykar Clan Ironwork to help cast the One Ring. I then activate it and draw a card. After that, I play a Mycosynth Gardens and move to my end step, putting a counter onto the Tunnel Grinder. Arja just draws, casts Greed, and passes. John plays a Sulphur Falls, and then casts Young Pyromancer and a Monastery Mentor. He then casts a Talisman of Creativity, making a Monk token and a Spirit token. John follows that up with a Felwar Stone, making some more tokens. Matt draws and plays a Swamp. He then casts a Rat Colony, and then casts a Rat Colony, and then casts a Rat Colony. I draw, having found Karn the Great Curator, which is what I was looking for before. I then draw 2 cards by activating the One Ring, and cast a Soul Guide Lantern, exiling Mystical Tutor as it enters. I then sacrifice the Lantern to the Ironworks to help cast Daretti. And once Daretti's out, downtick him, sacrificing the Crucible of Worlds to bring back the Mycosynth Lattice. With the ability on the stack, John sacrifices 5 spirits to Kykar, making 5 red mana, and then lets the ability resolve, and the Mycosynth Lattice comes in. I announce I'll move through my combat step, and in response, John uses the floating red mana to cast the Shattering Pulse, but without buyback. With his spell targeting my Lattice, I sacrifice a bunch of permanents to float 14 colorless mana. And I then use that floating mana to cast Planar Bridge, and then activate it. I then go and grab Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and once he's on the field, -5 him to exile most of the board. Arja responds by bringing back the Razorlash Transmogrant, and once he's done that, I downtick Karn and get to return Brass's Tunnel Grinder from exile to hand, and I pass after that. Arja draws and plays a Swamp. He goes to combat and takes out Karn with the Transmogrant. After combat, he casts Caged Sun and names Black, and then recasts Ashnod. He then equips her with the crown and passes to John. John plays a Sea of Clouds as his land for turn, and recasts his commander. Once the Bird Wizard's out, he casts the Wizard that makes birds with a Marine Mystic, and passes to Matt. Matt draws and replays Ashcoat, and then moves through his phases to his end step. He mills 4, and returns 2 rat colonies to hand. I take 2 from the One Ring, and draw, and then activate the One Ring to draw 3 more. I play a Mountain for turn, and uptick Ugin to take out Kykar. I then replay the Tunnel Grinder, discarding 5 cards to draw 6, and pass after that. Arja's got a swamp for turn and plays his own planar bridge, and then activates it and goes to find oppression. Going to combat, he swings Ashnod at Ugin, and on attack, sacrifices the Transmogrant to make a Power Stone and draw a card. Ugin then takes the hit, and he passes after that. John plays a mountain and casts Haze of Rage with buyback, making a bird and discarding a card to oppression. He then casts it again and makes another bird, pumps his board, and discards another card to oppression. Moving to combat, John swings his pumped up Murmuring Mystic at Ugin to take him out, and passes. Matt draws and plays a swamp. He then plays a rat colony, discarding a rat colony, and then plays another rat colony and discards a swamp. He moves to combat and swings Ashcoat at Arja for 3. He then moves to his end step, milling 4 and getting back 2 rat colonies and passing to me. I lose 3 and then draw and then play Phyrexia's Core. I then cast a Solemn Simulacrum and go and find a basic. I then activate the One Ring to draw 4 more cards and then cast a Goblin Engineer, discarding Anger to the Oppression trigger. I then move to my end step and put another counter onto the Tunnel Grinder and pass to Arja. Arja's main phase has him casting Eldrazi Monument, and he then brings back the Transmogrant. Moving to combat, he swings Ashnod at Matt for 3, sacrificing the Transmogrant for a Power Stone, and Matt then takes 3 commander damage. Arja then remembers his own Oppression trigger, discarding a swamp, and then plays a swamp, and passes. John draws and recasts Kykar and passes to Matt. Matt draws and plays a rat colony, discarding rat colony, and then activates Nykthos for 4 black mana. He then plays another rat colony, and then a Predator's Hour. Matt then gives Ashcoat Fear with Shizo, and he moves to combat. He swings Ashcoat and his 2 rat colonies at Arja, and before moving to blocks, Arja activates a planar bridge. Arja then goes to find a Noxious Gearhulk, which as it comes in, blows up one of the rat colony, and he gains some life. He then takes the rest of the hit. This has Arja exiling his top 2 cards to Predator's Hour, and Matt then plays a swamp from one of them, and then casts a Scrap Heap Scrounger. After that, Matt moves to his end step, and his Ashcoat trigger goes off, milling him for 4, and returning 2 rat colonies to his hand. I lose 4 to the One Ring trigger, and draw for turn, and then activate the ring, drawing 5. I sacrifice my Solemn Simulacrum to the Goblin Engineer, and get back Rings of Brighthearth, and draw a card. I then play a Basalt Monolith, and between the rings and the monolith I have infinite colorless mana. I then use one of those to cast a Voltaic Key, and then a Mirage Mirror. I can then use the Key, Planar Bridge, and Rings of Brighthearth to basically put all of my permanents into play, and the first 2 that I go and get are Reckless Fireweaver and Ingenious Artillerist. I then put to field a Codex Shredder, and activate it and copy its ability with the rings, to get back a Mycosynth Lattice and Dockside Extortionist to my hand. I then cast the Lattice, and then the Dockside, who will make enough treasure tokens to kill the table because of the Fireweaver and Artillerist, winning me the game. Game review time. This game was exactly 1 hour and 2 minutes. And it's always fun to see the cards that I added into my deck finally being played. There have been a ton of new additions to the deck that I just haven't had a chance to put in, and I definitely feel like I've helped fix the draw problem that Daretti had earlier on. By mid-game I definitely felt like a threat, although John did a great job of locking me out of my combo early on. John's Kykar deck has a lot of buyback cards, and it's mostly to help make tokens and always have an instant or sorcery in hand. Considering how many cards I drew and made the table draw that one turn when he had Smothering Tithe out, I thought for sure John had the game in the bag. But he had used most of the mana from the Smothering Tithe to stop me from going off, but it also forced him to use up some valuable tutors. Matt's Ashcoat deck was really cool to see, and honestly I didn't even know it existed. It was one of the Jumpstart commanders that I really didn't pay much attention to, but it was fun to see in action. I liked the self-mill as a way to recur things back to his hand, and despite the fact that there was an oppression out by the late game, he seemed to be the least hindered by it. He was always getting back 2 rat colonies at the end of his turn thanks to his commander's trigger, so it really didn't matter that he was discarding 1 or 2 cards whenever he cast a spell per turn, since he was going to get them back anyway. Arja has been largely silent about what his Ashnod's win rate is, and I really don't know exactly what it does. It seems to be heavily focused around making Power Stones, and then using things like Improvise or the Inspiring Statuary to help cast other spells. It was definitely cool to see, and I'm hoping to see more of it in the future. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.